And we are back with another installment of the Think Fitness Life podcast. This episode, we're going to be talking about building a bulletproof mindset, or building mental immunity is another way to refer it, and a strong mind. Before we get going, we always like to mention any news that we have either experienced with our clients or something that came up in the media that we would like to discuss. And I believe Menchie has something.
I do, and it goes right along with the topic today. This article was about a month ago, and it goes: Ohio teen loses more than 100 pounds while walking to school every day. So this kid, Michael Watson, lost 115-pound totals by walking to and from school every day. And what happened was
Uphill both ways. No, I'm just kidding.
he fought. So he started off overall weight 335 pounds, overweight, obese, all this stuff. And then one day, I guess someone at his school made fun of him, made fun of his chins. And he was like, hey, that really hurt his ego, hurt his self-esteem. So he decided that he was going to walk to school every day, no days off, even if it rained, snow, whatever, he was walking. At one point, he said he didn't even care or know when the bus came. I'm like, hell yeah. Then also on the side of it, he decided to diet, and he was committed to it. The amount of commitment he had was great because it says he worked at a fast food restaurant after school every day. So the temptation's right there. So the biggest thing, and I found this great about the story, is it's inspiring other people to have the mindset, have the discipline to see what you want and go out and get it. And he said that he had some fallback days where, he would not be 100% on the diet, but he just told himself every day is a new day. And over time, he saw the results. And at the end of the article, in quotes, it wrote, anybody can do it if they put their mind to it. So for people out there, I mean, this kid's 18 years old. And just by walking to school every day, 20 minutes back and forth, doesn't matter if it's cold, wet, sunny, hot, doesn't matter. He did it, and then add the diet to it. I mean, it is possible. I know we talk a lot about how to do it with working out and all this other stuff. It can be pretty simple if you just grind to it.
Yeah, it makes me think of how we analyze and pick things apart and build programs and question everything and second question everything. And once it's all said and done, look at everything and make sure everything makes sense. And once we've gotten to that point where we've questioned and we've measured twice and we've decided what the plan's going to be, we stay the course, we execute. We do it for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it may be, whatever the modality was, but we stay the course and we ride that out and see where that takes us. And I think that that's so important because that's that consistency aspect. People have goals in mind, and I guarantee on his journey of losing that weight, he fluctuated. He would go up, he'd go down. He'd go up a little bit more, he'd go down even more. He would go up just a tiny bit, then he'd go down just a tiny bit. And it's just all part of it. I think a lot of people get stuck somewhere in that journey. They yo-yo, and they don't realize that that's kind of the purpose of it. You're not supposed to let the highs get you too high. You don't want the lows get you too low. You stay neutral. You get proud, but you're never satisfied. You stay hungry, and you treat everything like it's a new day, that you're going to attack every day with this sort of the same approach, or not. I shouldn't use the word approach, but you're going to attack the same day with the level of desire and drive as you did the previous day. That doesn't mean the same intensity, but there's something to that that mindset of accepting it and just to keep your head down and going. So I love that story. That's a great way to start off today. And where do you know where that was?
Where he was, where he lived? In Ohio.
Yeah, where was that?
Yeah.
Ohio.
It didn't
Do
say
you know
where.
where?
It just said kid from Ohio, but it did
Wow,
say the high
somewhere.
school. So I'm sure I think it was McKinley High School in Ohio. But I mean, it was just, I mean, the kid had to do what he had to do. And I think everyone has this, turning point in their lives when someone says something to you or something happens to you that all of a sudden you're like, damn it, I got to change, or this isn't what I like. I have to be something better than what I am right now. And he found that. I mean, it all takes is, and especially in school nowadays, with all this bullying stuff, there's a lot of chatter vocally by kids just going back and forth verbally and abusing. At what point are you going to say internally, if this is not what I like, I want to change it? And this kid did. I mean, denied rides, said, no, I'm going to do it. I mean, not only is he just saying no to, an easy way out, an easy ride. The days when it's raining, I mean, he's probably got an umbrella, everything down, but he's walking to school pretty wet, and he's going to sit in school wet all day, and he's got to deal with it. I think that
And Canton, I just looked it up. Canton has a really high crime rate out of all within Ohio. Out of all the other communities, 98% of all other communities in Ohio have a lower crime rate than Canton. So it's in the top 2% for highest crime rate of Ohio. Not, I mean, that just adds to it, like
another obstacle, right? Most
um,
people be like, we'll not do it. I mean,
exactly.
I give this kid
Exactly.
all the credit in the world. Changes whole
And
persona. I mean, this kid's got a whole new self esteem going. It said. I mean, that's what else could you ask for a young adult entering the world, going to college or entering the workforce? I mean, other than that, if you go in with this, yeah, you're never going to amount to anything. You kind of people start to live with that mindset, and it's just they don't do anything with it.
yeah, we could probably spend a whole episode just talking about why people are that way in
Because we
today's
make them that
society
way.
today. I want to briefly,
Everything's given.
right?
Everything's so
Exactly, exactly.
easy.
It's like it's exactly everything's been a mental what's the word, training wheels. Everything's been mentally training wheeled to get people what they need or want, or what someone has worked so hard for to get. They help shortcut and coach their kid along to get there quicker, rather than have them go through a grueling process to learn the foundation of having a good process and be process driven rather than outcome driven. And too many times we outcome driven, and then when we don't get the outcome we want, instead of people accepting a loss or a failure and learning from it and getting better and looking at it as a learning or growth moment, it's world ending and it destroys them. And they quite frankly, for lack of better words, have a little bit of a hissy fit and a breakdown, and they don't see how to get better from it. And that's a true loss. That's a loss and a failure that you didn't learn from, that you didn't grow from. So yeah, I think
Absolutely.
that's sort of a reason why people end up like that. But let's just mention a little bit, kind of building that hardened mindset. I mean, I know that you can probably level with me here that there was a period where I felt that I had to fake it till I made it, where I would put sort of ridiculous strains on myself almost just to see how far I could break myself and how far I could beat myself and if I could do it. And I can't think of stuff that I did off the top of my head when I was younger, but like I know, for example, this one sticks out to me today is I meditate. I try to meditate every single day, and I try to do it first thing in the morning because that's when you get the most telomere growth, and telomeres are really linked to longevity. So it's a little side note here, but I went out and I skipped my morning meditation. I went out and got the dog out, and there was this nice little flat rock, or topped rock facing the water. And I sat up there, started meditating, and within 5 or 6 breaths, flies started landing on me. And one was, on my face and on my back, and I just looked at it as like a way to actually harden my mental immunity at meditation, at being able to focus and empty my mind when there's even more of a direct stimulus on me. And you know what the point of this is kind of at the beginning stage. You do have to kind of find things that are going to challenge you in a way that you can still cognitively see what's going on. I couldn't just like sit under a waterfall with water monsooning on me and try to meditate. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, maybe I could work my way up there eventually, right? Like drips of water, then pouring water slowly, then a bucket, right? But you have to look for ways to challenge yourself to get better. People, I think, get too kind of stuck because they don't see the way how to get better. But your mind is a muscle, just like anything else. And just to add to this story, like near the end, I'm breathing and just staying still, and one crawls on my face and starts to go in my lip and goes in my mouth, and I let it do it, and I just stay comfortable and I stay breathing. And that's just an example of how to work your way up into a mental immunity. Whether that's you have to start taking the stairs every day instead of the elevator, or you're going to carry your farmer's carries on your last set of your exercise. You're going to carry it for twice as long. Like, just doing a little bit of something every day and every workout to challenge
and that's
yourself.
the thing you say. It's just it's doing something that you're, I wouldn't say not not comfortable with, or doing something out of your normal routine. I think we as humans, we get very habit driven. And if it's outside the norm of the habit, it's like the whole world goes upside down. Small things, don't take the easy way. I mean, it's not going to make anyone better. I think that's a great example. And there's so many, I'm sure we'll kind of get into, of how you can, and it doesn't ever necessarily have to be exercise wise. It can be anything to make your mindset grow.
Right.
I mean, you're sitting there, I'm sure I've sat there and you'll have bugs on you and you're like, these things are a pain in the ass, they're bothering. But if you just shut that down and let it go, it's like, you're telling your brain, like, these things aren't even going to affect you.
Yeah, it's a little bit of an acceptance. It's a little bit of, no matter what the result is, even there in the beginning, I whited them
They're
away.
coming back.
No matter what the result is, the good and the or the bad, yeah, you accept it. And the fact that you're going through that process and you slap that fly away that was annoying, but then you tried again, and this time you were able to be calm, or maybe this day you weren't able to be calm, but you got a second further before you slap the fly away. That's still progress, and it's being able to accept it. And it's the same thing with the mind. Is your mind is panicking to stop running, to put that weight down, to say, this is too heavy, rack it and go lighter. And there are times for that. Don't get me wrong, but there also are times for saying, you know what, that's irrational. This is not too heavy. I just did the last set. This is only 10 pounds more on each side, or 20 pounds total, whatever. I can do this. And you just try. And you set yourself up in a format so that if you fail, you don't die, right? That's the hope. Even in our military, our Navy SEALs, they have to drown and actually die. But they are set up in a scenario where there's people running the show so that they save them and AFib them, or whatever they have to do to get them back to life. And so you set up the squat rack with the safety bars and whatnot. So if you miss or you fail, that's actually a way that you've hardened your mind, because you went out there and you tried, and that's all you can ever do.
Huge.
I think that's important to mention too, because when you're strengthening your mind, you're going to hit so many failures, and that's kind of the purpose. Like, it's not how hard you can hit. It's not how hard you can hit. It's how hard you can get hit and keep going.
And thinking about your scenario, right? The flies just keep coming, and they're always going to keep coming. That's because that's what life is. I mean, yes, it's a story, but if you look kind of more into it, it's kind of like, okay, that you're sitting there, and then these flies could represent any sort of hardship in your life, are always going to be there. Yeah, you could take bug spray and spray it on you and take the easy way and never have to deal with them again. But where's that going to get you in the end? Like you still have to deal with these things constantly. And I think that's one big thing for a mindset is accepting what is here, what is present, what is in front of you. And that means you got to face your fears like every single day. You got to do stuff that you're not really going to enjoy. On the exercise side, you're going to have to endure that burning, endure that uncomfortableness, that pain that comes with conditioning, working out to failure, or if it's just like getting used to fear. Because once you shut fear down in the body, the brain and the neurological system can basically do anything it needs to. So I think that's the biggest thing. And we all have fears. We all have
Yes.
very threatening events in our life, which are going to happen. But if you can mitigate that fear, you think about that, your brain can figure and almost do anything possible, which is why you have these super athletes out there.
Dude, it's and like the classic line, the only thing you have to fear is fear itself, because fear itself is having, if you're if you're letting fear overcome you, then fear is having a biochemical reaction within your body that's causing you to not put your best mind or foot forward, so to speak. So like you said, you're not going to be able to critically think accurately, you're not going to be able to make the right decisions, and in the end you would be better if you can control that fear. And one thing that it actually is bringing back memories of is the ideas of negative and positive. And you want to attribute, I don't, maybe that's not the right word. You want to try to basically destroy the negative and limit the positive. You want to stay neutral. You don't want to associate negative with anything or positive with really anything. You just want to stay neutral. And a another good point on that is being able to be the fly on the wall for your consciousness and what your brain experiences. They talk about you have big mind and little mind, and when you can sit in big mind and respect your little mind and just see things for what they are and not view things as negative or positive, then you're not putting emotional agony on your system, and you're building what's called a mental immunity. Your brain is mentally stable and immune to negative or positive thoughts to make it
In
veer
emotion,
its course that it was already running. And the last point I'm going to make before I let Menchie talk as well, because I keep feeling like I'm stealing the mic on this one, is with controlling that, you have to remember, and I got this from the Book of Joy with the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu by Douglas Abrams, or with Douglas Abrams, great book, Book of Joy. And in there, they have lots of studies referencing how you basically have four human emotions. Like, yeah, there's a bunch of other emotions, but they come down to four basic ones. And they're fear, sadness, anger, and joy. And these are biological. These are hardwired into us. These four experiences of the mind. And they have their evolutionary needs. But right off the bat, you have you have three more difficult ones to endure than the fourth. Everyone can endure joy, but not everybody can endure fear, sadness, or anger in a healthy manner. So right off the bat, you got to understand that the odds are not in your favor,
and I
my
think a
friend.
lot of people
So
they see this,
this
well, they
last
see
point,
that and they'll
what I'm
say,
thinking
"Hey, I
about
want to
that.
shut down the other three and just live in joy." Which, yeah, that's great, but that's not a reality. And another big thing with very mindset driven people, and I'm sure you know this, is you have to almost sometimes be emotionless. Like you have to really control your emotions. Excuse me. And almost basically turn them off. Have some have some apathy and just say, I'm not going to let something bother you. You're going to have lack of interest or concern on some things. When people say stuff, I mean, it's kind of built-in self-defense for us for mindset. Is a lot of these people, or if you're out there dieting and you're out with your friends, they're like, oh, come on, do it. Don't be a party pooper or whatever. Like sometimes you have to just shut that down and be like, you know what? I'm not going to let that affect me or anything else. And there's times where you need to have some of these emotions, but can you control them? And that's another big thing of the mindset, because if you let that anger control you or some other things, like that's going to lead to bad decisions, and then bad decisions lead to negative outcomes. And I'm glad you kind of brought that up with the negative positive, because I think a lot of people only think positive. They think positive is really good. If I have more of them, it'll benefit me. I'll feel happier and I'll feel joy. And then on the other side, they're like negative. Well, I want to limit the negative ones. Obviously, you want to like big negatives, but negatives are good at the same time where positives are good and positives can be bad. Nowadays, we get this whole system of these instant dopamine gratifications where everything's so positive, positive, positive that, like you said, there's no balance. So we're starting to live up more positive. So what happens when something negative comes along? It is like a crushing blow to someone's ego, mindset, whatever, and all of a sudden they're at a new low because their body doesn't know how to deal with that up and down. Biggest thing is we have to learn to make good decisions and choices, because that's basically what it comes down to. Is every person has a choice to make, and it's going to be what actually creates an end result, and that makes our mindsets is a compilation of your decisions over the past. Your brain's going to learn it, and if you always choose to make an easy decision or grab junk food or whatever it is that might be not healthy, your body's going to lean towards that. It's not even going to think about the other benefit options that it can, and it's going to drive there. So what I tell a lot of people is you have to delay that positive feedback loop. I know it sounds kind of crazy and kind of shitty, but you know, make some sacrifices and go without that instant dopamine drop. And then as you build it up and build it up, and it'll be anticipated in the brain, then when you finally get it, the next time you get that dopamine, it'll be a greater response. You'll actually have more joy, and then you won't just be in this loop of, okay, if I get small doses, I'm fine. More like the science behind it. But I mean, it kind of goes back to another kind of big thing, and I know I'm big into this, and you are too. Is almost like pain is inevitable, like it has to happen. And it's how do you respond to it. Our one of our big kind of role models is Viktor Frankl, and I mean that book is just unbelievably. You kind of feel humbling. You just feel like you're not even come close to some of the
Humbling.
stuff that these people endured, and it's how do you take the lessons out of that book and really develop yourself? And it's like at the end of the day, the person that you decide to become, as it says from the book, is a result of inner decisions that you make, and it's not about situational influences around you. It's all about the choices we make inside and how we're going to be. But pain is definitely one of those things that has to be there. Um,
And one of those things that I want to kind of circle back to what you talked about that goes right along with what you're saying is it's important to understand that Menchie's talking about shutting down the system, you being in control and shutting it down, not rejecting. Because a lot of people make that mistake and they try to, what he said, they try to just kind of ignore the bad and reject all the negative thoughts, but then just go live in the good. And that's a falsifying way of doing that. And that's a temporary happiness because the negative is going to come. You need to be able to accept it, but then be able to shut it down. You need to be able to say, yeah, I'm fucking afraid as hell of putting this 315 on my back. But you know what? I'm going to appease myself by saying, I just did 295. I just did 305. I can do this. And you tell yourself that and you go and you shut down the emotional side of things and you go and try to hit it. And then you adjust again and see how that felt, like what was working, what wasn't working. And you assess again. And I think that's super important because in building this mental immunity or hardened mind, you have to be able to accept the negative and the positive, but not let that rock you emotionally. And what Menchie's talking about with the more science side of it and that dopamine drop, we'll go right back into that. You have amygdala processing and you have prefrontal cortex processing. Your amygdala processing is more emotional driven, and our prefrontal cortex is much more methodical and thought out. And if you can think about it, as anytime you've gotten into a heated discussion with somebody and their voice gets higher and they start to speed up the way they talk, they start to talk quicker, or I mean, they talk louder, they start to get a little bit more upset. They're starting to transition over to their amygdala, and they're using emotion to drive their reason rather than critical thinking. So we want to stay on that amygdala processing side because we're smarter creatures when we get the chance to slow down and think and process things. But when we are instinctual creatures, it's just based upon the learned behavior, like what Menchie was talking about before, about how you can adjust and change your thinking and your actions accordingly. So if you're 70-year-old war veteran who has a hardened mind, yeah, I don't worry about you getting rocked and coming back to your base, right? But if you're in this generation we live in now and you're 16, 17 years old, you need to understand that you can't just ignore and reject all the negative thoughts. You just have to be able to know and be mature about and reasonable about when it's time to accept the system of understanding how does this make me feel and shutting down the system of how does this make me feel. And I think actually one of the guys who you interviewed, physical therapist, had a really good point on this. He said there's time for assessing your movement patterns and what's and doing corrective work, and there's other times to just shut the fuck up and go.
And that's
I think
a
that's
big
really
thing
important.
nowadays. Is I think you see the younger generations, and I don't want to say younger, but like a lot of this, everything's emotional based. Everything is like, oh, how your emotion feels,
Yes,
how
emotionally
you
driven.
react from your emotions. It's like that's not a really good thing to be teaching. You know, not even
No,
decision
but
making.
think about the parent that just wants to do right by their kid. I'm not trying to tell anybody how to parent. I'm not judging anybody. I'm just simply making a point. And one thing it stems back to, and I see it all the time with in my family and with just other people. They just ask, "What do you want for dinner? What do you want? What do you want to do? What would make you happy?" And it's like, yeah, there is a point where you gotta let the riverbed guide itself, but there's a point where you're the fucking parent, you're the mature adult, you've had more life experiences. You need to be the riverbed and guide that water, and you need to make the decision whether they go kicking or screaming. And I think a lot of parents are either I don't need to go into why, but I think a lot of it comes down to they're embarrassed if their kid has that reaction in public, and
Yeah.
it's like that's just part of it. Like I don't know, don't put the strain on you that your kid's acting a certain way. It's just part of his growth and development, and any mature person will understand that looking on. They won't look at you like a bad parent. And I think that weighs on people, and I think a lot of people it just weighs on them mentally, maybe because they had an unloving parent or neglecting parent, and they just want to be that loving and support that they never had. So
Right.
again, I don't need to go into why, but I think that's one thing that happens is it's like this constant, well, what do you want? What do you want? And that's very emotional driven to what they do or don't want. And it's a learned behavior at a young age. And I'll be the first to say that I had that upbringing. Like I had a mother who her mother hated her and would curse at her and would shit on her emotionally. And because of that, my mom was overbearing. So I had that. And I had to fake it till I made it. And I had to do shit on myself, which was like, Matt, you're gonna run this 20 minutes, and it made sense, right? Like I'm gonna walk this part, I'm gonna jog this part, I'm gonna sprint this part. And it's like once it made sense, it's like, Matt, you're going to execute it. And I wanted to die. I wanted to stop. I probably cried a lot in the beginning, right? I still cry to this day. I don't view that as a weakness, but building a mental immunity. But my point is that you got to figure out how to step out of that comfort zone so you can build that mental immunity, because it is a little bit of that panic but that control, that accepting that you're not super comfortable, but accepting that you don't need to listen to your emotions that are telling you to get the fuck out, that you can say, you know what, I'm going to do this because I'm building a stronger mindset, to build a stronger body, to be healthier, and I'm not going to let this throw me off course. I'm going to stay for another 10 breaths, and I'm going to breathe. And maybe I make it to 8, maybe I make it to 9, maybe I make it to the 10. But the point is that you're starting the process to figure out when it's time to be emotional and when it's time to be analytical. Excuse me, impulsive as an animal and analytical like a
it's
wise
system
creature.
1 versus system 2. And I think probably there's probably one of the first places to start. I mean, we could start on our checklist of, building this bulletproof mindset is check your emotions, control your emotions. Don't let them win you over during decisions. And if you are in check, help people around you control their emotions to situations, whether someone said something or it's a loss on a sports field or it's a failure in the gym, whatever it is. I think that's probably a big number one to check off the list is, all right, you got to get that in check, and then you can start moving on. Because if those emotions control you and control some parents, and then they let that have that to kids, or in school systems where they don't want to aggravate kids, or hey, tell them your kid didn't make the team and that kid's sad. Like, this is a problem that we need to fix. I think huge right there. Start with emotion.
Yeah, because it does transcend later in life to a person being an adult, a person being very hurt, and a person making actions that, if otherwise wasn't in that emotional drive, may have not committed a murder or whatever, some type of harm in any fashion. So I do think that you're right. It is an important thing to be addressed, but enough about parenting, as we could go on that for
kind of
years.
stems into, okay, like I know everyone has different parenting, right, and different upbringings, and I had a completely different upbringing than you did, and which is great. And I think a lot of people maybe look at trainers or look at some people with this mental mindset and be like, oh, you've always had that. And it's like, no, I didn't.
Right.
I grew up completely different with different life lessons than other people. I mean, everyone has their own story, but I think just like the news article at the beginning is, everyone has a point in their life. And I don't think it's like we said, we were talking earlier, it's not a traumatic event, but there's some sort of event that all of a sudden opens your eyes and you're like, I need to change. And some people have those events and some people don't. I'm not going on statistics here, but I would say the majority of people who probably don't have those events or a hard drive or a why for them aren't going to be these hardened mindset people that go off and do great things. Where other times someone like myself is, there's certain events that have happened, and it's not just one, it's multiple events, what people have said or done, or it could just be a gesture that's like, okay, that hits home to me. I need to change. What do I need to do to literally get where I want to be? So I have a clear vision of what I want to do. And that's another thing I think people really don't have is a clear view of their end goal. Like, everyone says, oh, I'd be great to be, less weight, or it'd be great to this. Well, think about it and actually do. And I think you brought this up probably last season and said that I think athletes are actually 23 to 25% better or more accuracy at free throws if they actually visualize shooting it. So there alone, it goes huge aspects of it. If you can't see what you're aiming at, then your mindset's going to start straying off. And I think that goes into different upbringings. I know we've talked about our stories in the past here, and it's completely different, but we kind of ended at the same route, and we would be doing workouts in the end, and let's do some mental toughness exercise at the end, and we'd be both on board.
And I think that's one reason why I'm being very careful at talking about this stuff before we dive into some of the deeper methodologies or techniques to get there and different ways to practice it, because it's really important for me to showcase that I'm not an end product, and if people think I am an end product for a goal, then that's great. That makes me feel really good. But at the same time, like, just know that it doesn't just happen overnight, and it wasn't something that was built in me. It was something that I had to kind of build within myself. And I think a lot of times um, we can get I guess the word I'm looking for, just basically we lose motivation if we look at the end product and we're nothing near the end product and we can't foresee or visualize the path to get there. So same thing happens when you make a goal on yourself. Like, I got to lose 100 pounds in whatever. I got to lose 100 pounds this year. And if by the 3 months in you haven't lost a pound, then you're going to start to be like, negatively self-talking, like, well, I'll never be able to get to 100 then in a year, because you're not getting those results, not getting that little bit of the step in the right direction to be able to visualize things. So at that point you would make an adjustment, right? It might shorten your goal. But again, my point is that I want people to understand that it's a spectrum, and it's something that you just continue to harden. It's just like anything else. You continue to weight train, you continue to squat, you continue to deadlift, you continue to run, you continue to eat healthy, you continue to brush your teeth. It's just another continued practice that you do to maintain a well-rounded, healthy lifestyle, and continue your path into enjoying it which way you can. But let's get into some of these more specific techniques. And I'm going to start off the bat. And I'm going to start off
Do
up
it.
to bat, right? Knock it out of the park. And I'm going to start off with no water and no music in your workout. That builds such a mental toughness because, one, you don't have anything to mentally distract you. So just start with that. Start with go. If you listen to music every time you work out, try doing one workout a week where you don't listen to music, and then work your way up to doing a full week without it. It's gonna suck, but it's gonna be much more rewarding. You're not gonna have that mental distraction. The water thing, though, is another good one that I love doing or just on, like, with. I know people are gonna bash me, and it
Bring them
sounds
on.
insane, but you lose you lose performance when you're just 3% dehydrated. What fucking athlete is going to be like, oh shit, I think I'm losing a little dehydration. I need to timeout, 30-second timeout. I need to stop the game. I got to get a sip of water. I'm sorry, you got to be able to demand performance out of your body at the worst of circumstances. So, I wait till people get a little acclimated to my training style and to the workout program, and I'm like, this week you're going to go through every hour and you're not stopping for water. That does a couple things, because it's like that's been their break. That's been their time to, like, walk, take a deep breath, get the rest that they think they need, get the water that they think they need. So now they are a little bit tougher during their workout, but they also don't accept rest. They're like, well, fuck it. I'm just going to go right into the next set. Like, we're doing like a 2 exercise circuit or 3 exercise circuit, and they'll just start banging it out because there is no break. There is no, like, well, at least at the end of this round, I'll break for 30 seconds and go walk around and la di da di da. And I think it just builds another toughness and mental
Yeah, and I
toughness in
think,
people.
I mean, I'm a big music person, and without the music, you're kind of alone in your thoughts. You're more thinking about how the weight feels, how everything is around you, being more aware, and you kind of get more neurological sensory in, and it helps build that mindset. So, I mean, hey, let's roll with it, and let's not drink water and not listen to music tomorrow. Let's be uncomfortable. Let's do it. Do it.
Really what it is. It's be getting
Oof.
training your body to be uncomfortable when
Oh
you're
yeah.
uncomfortable. And I would say that there's like levels. There's like one where you're super cognitively relaxed, but you're a little uncomfortable. There's two where you're cognitively distracted. You're starting to get more and more uncomfortable. And then there's three where you are so uncomfortable. You want to get the fuck out of the sauna, or you want to get out of the cold shower, but you stop and you say, am I dead? No. Okay. Breathe and just try to get one breath in, and then try to get another breath in, and then try to get another breath in. And
I mean,
yeah, let's talk. Do you have any
I
techniques
mean,
you
the
want to
cold shower, you
share?
brought the cold showers up is one that is absolutely great for me, or it sucks. I mean, I hate it. Don't get me wrong. But it tells you, okay, I'm getting a benefit of it. So I think a lot of times, you don't just do stuff that is uncomfortable, but you also have to know why you're doing it. So like a cold shower is very good for mitochondrial health, very good for overall body system, so that you know that you're not just like torturing yourself, but you're also getting effect out of it. But at the same time, you're going to be uncomfortable with it, and you're going to kind of have to deal with it. And another thing kind of go along with the cold showers is sometimes, I mean, sometimes it can be a little bit battle with me, but sleeping with the windows open and dropping the heat down to, the high 60s and being a little uncomfortable while you're asleep. I think for me that goes a long way, and that's kind of how I operate my mindset wise is just doing stuff that's uncomfortable. And you're another one I freaking love is on the exercise side is doing something miserable for 5 to 10 minutes, and really pushing the envelope and just
Oh
enduring
God,
that just state of uncomfortable, and then just being kind of same thing, kind of telling myself is, look, other people have done this, athletes have done this, military people have done this, people who have suffered have done this. So like, I can't really just be like, I'm not going to do it. So another way to harden kind of your mindset is you just do stuff that is absolutely going to be tough, and you might never get good at it. And I think that's a big thing I tell a lot of my clients now is, look, there's stuff that's going to be timed, and I don't expect you to get crazy numbers and whatnot. It's just doing it and going through the whole time. Like last week with the deadlift thing. I mean, that's just not really. It's not. I mean, it's great to get numbers and metrics because you measure stuff, but just being uncomfortable that full 10 minutes, it kind of just makes you say, "Hey, I can do more than I actually thought I could."
dude, you should totally. Man, you need to just come live
Yeah,
out in Utah. But dude, we could fucking put 40 pounds of water and just sprint up these hills, and it is miserable. Or like challenge yourself to go to the top of a hike as fast as possible, and you're like running. And I mean, I suck with endurance
doesn't
stuff like
matter.
that and sprints, and the air is thinner. But it is so rewarding when you can push yourself to do something that you feel like is gonna make you hit a wall, and you do that. You go into it knowing that you're gonna hit a wall, and you put your best foot forward, and that's how you get better. And that was a really good point how you mentioned all the benefits, so people aren't
Right.
just like mindlessly just doing difficult things. So I think it is also important to mention that one reason to build a strong mind and mental immunity is so that you don't get rocked off your neutral homeostatic point. And little things in life are always going to happen, tragedies, deaths, um, and it's easier said than done. But the idea is that you don't let them ruin
Mm.
your biochemical makeup. And that's why, like, the only thing to fear is fear itself. And same thing with stress. Stress is literally like cortisol or acid running through your veins. So you I guess the best example I have that I can sift through is having tasks on my plate and just like always accepting that there's going to be a pile. There's always a pile of tasks to do, and every day I just take a shovelful and get rid of some. But there's always going to be more on. And I used to be like the impulsive guy that like did all the tasks, and then when a new one popped up, like I did it right then and just get to my list. And then when more tasks piled on, it would stress me out. And I was driven by stress, and I was ruled by stress. And now it's just like a task comes in, I don't let it rock my day, I don't let it break my world, and
Yeah.
I enjoy the process, and I
And it,
just go do it. So I think that is important to mention why we build mental immunity, so that
right.
things don't throw us off our course for life. And an example of that is Vince Young. I always bring this up with all my clients. He was all-star quarterback and went into the NFL and had a couple bad games, and he got booed by a crowd one time, and he was never the same player. He was never the same person. He wasn't the same elite performer that he had the potential to be, because his mentality, his emotions, um, got rocked from their neutrality, and he stayed in
And I
negative.
think, talking about all that and having a reason why we do that. And I think, some people will disagree with this and disagree with me, but I think sometimes you do have to do stuff that is basically, you're going to suffer through. And, I think another person that we both talked about before and kind of taken some wisdom from is David Goggins. I mean, that guy just does stuff that he knows he's going to be completely
Oh,
uncomfortable. And
shit.
I think just because it's still going to give you a benefit and you know why, but there's sometimes you might not need to know why you're doing something. You're just saying, hey, I'm going to get on this thing and I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do 1,600-yard sprints. And if I'm not going to back out. I have to finish them no matter what. I think there's always that stuff that people should do. And I think that's a great aspect of how we operate as trainers is sometimes people are asking her like, why am I doing this? And you're going to give them a basically an explanation of scientific, but at the end of the day, you just want them to get on. You want them to suffer a bit to make them a little bit more hardened mentally, saying, "Hmm, if something worse in life comes up, or there's going to be stuff in life that you don't even have an answer for, or are going to have a why for, that are just going to hit you blindside and be miserable. Can you handle that stuff?" So I think that
Every time that I've brought a client to hit a wall cardiovascularly or physically, and they've failed at the end of the workout. Maybe we're doing something body weight. Maybe we're doing a max out sprint. Maybe we're doing farmer's carry into a sprint into a core movement. They think just hearing that they're going to die. And they die during the workout. I joke with people like, when I see them the next day, like, how was your rebirth yesterday? Like, because you fucking die, you crush yourself, and your body rebuilds itself. And my point though, before I veer off too much, is every time someone goes through that, the next day they're like, dude, I felt like shit for the next hours, but then later that day, man, I felt
ooh,
like $1,000,000. And there's got to be something scientific about the dopamine and different chemicals making you feel good about what you just did and all that stuff. But there's something about looking back on that and gaining a confidence in yourself and in your abilities to say, you know what? Going into that, I dreaded it. I didn't want to do it, but I fucking did it. And that's rewarding. And a quote that comes to mind is actually one I was about to
fire
send
away.
you. And it's from
Ooh.
Epictetus. And he goes, freedom is not procured by a full enjoyment of what is desired, but by controlling the desire. And
Ooh,
I think that's pretty fucking badass. I'll leave
great.
it there. I'll let you talk now.
Mm.
I know, dude. So I have this Stoic app. Little side note to build mental immunity. This Stoic app because I really am into like Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus. I can't really pronounce that name. Um, Lucius Seneca and Caesar. All these great quotes from these great time periods, and it just there'll be little bliss moments where I like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And that I woke up to
Ooh.
that like last Friday morning. It was badass. I had a really good
But
lift
you
that day.
brought up a
But
great point right there, and I
yeah,
didn't even really think about it until you just dawned on me. And so I was looking at my iPod the other day, my iTunes, and I was looking at like my top played songs ever since I got first gotten this thing 9 years ago, and I've played this track about I think it's 168 times, and it's this motivational track that I downloaded when I first got this thing off of like YouTube. And I think that goes a long way for people is, now that we have instant access to apps, YouTube, books, or whatever. I mean, there's so many motivational speakers out there, speeches from past history through the years compiled. All sometimes it takes is just to go listen to
but,
them
but
and listen to the
yeah.
purpose of that speech and take, what are you going to get out of that speech? And I'll do it. Apparently I've done this 168 times. The top playlist on my iPod and I got like 13,000 songs, is this motivational track. And that must mean something to me. That means that this is saying, hey, this is what I have to do today. This is the same thing I listen to over and over again, but it drives me. So if you have
Yeah.
um, some people tape quotes to their wall. I have a piece of paper. I have some stuff on my computer. It's like, find quotes you like, read them every day, and then, own up to those quotes. I mean, go be those quotes. And how are you going to be better? And I think that's another huge aspect of having a mindset is, listening to these people who've made it, who have succeeded in this world, and take a lesson from them and just go do it.
Yeah, and I think one good tactic to doing that is grabbing on to that emotional trigger, that response that you're getting from the books you read, from the quotes you read, from the music you listen to, right? Like you don't just keep listening to a bunch of music. Or excuse me, I shouldn't say that. You build your workout playlist kind of around these songs that kind of turn that on. So once you've found that and been able to turn that on and hit that pathway, try your best to try to capture that without any other stimulus, because you're not always going to have things that are outside of your body to help you turn that on. So get that on. Understand what that feels like. If you've never worked out, start working out. If you use music, try to fire up your intensity. Get your fight or flight system going. Be that badass for a couple workouts that day, your first couple workouts that day, and just grab onto that. And then try to do it without any other stimulus. I think that's a really important point to make, because when you said that, it reminded me of this song by Trick Daddy that was like, "Let's go," and he just like screams that. That's like the chorus, and it was the only song I would listen to on repeat before a wrestling match, and I'd walk around because it was so much of like, oh, all right, your team's up, or you're at a tournament, you're going to be up in 3 hours, and you're like mentally anguishing, like thinking of this, like, fuck, I gotta wrestle that dude. Look at this fucker. Like, he's got tattoos all the way over his fucking arm and back and face, and we're not even 15 years old yet. So it's like I had to build that environment and that mental strength to be like, let's go, let's turn this shit on, let's just fucking go. So it's funny that you brought that up, because it made me think of that. Yes. I think that's a really good little tactic to kind of scaffold strength in your mind, is use these things. We're not saying never use them, but try to get to a point and progress to a point where you can just turn that fucker on when you need to, because you want to be the warrior in the garden.
It's not the music or the quotes or whatever you're listening to that's creating the motivation. You're listening to that, right? Everything is coming from in you. The thoughts you have when you listen to music. Sometimes it can be the beat, the vibrations running through your ears, but intrinsically, you're creating this scenario where you're visualizing, beating this guy on the mat, or running down the football field and making that tackle. You're building that intrinsically. So everything's got to come from within you first. No one can, really hold your hand and go out and be like, hey, I'm going to give you this motivation. Everything's got to come from within. And kind of to reiterate the paths we've gone on is control the emotions daily in your life for a moment. Pain is inevitable. It's going to have to be there. You're going to kind of have to learn to deal with it. Kind of face your fears daily and accept that what it is. And the last thing I tell a lot of people is you have to be very grateful what you have in life and the small things. Because a lot of these things, people look for these big joys and, oh, I got this and that and that. Sometimes it's just walking out my back door and being awake that day at 5 a.m. when the sun's coming up and you're just seeing the first daylight. It's like, I appreciate these small things in life. And a lot of people have said that is you have to appreciate the beauty in the world to really understand what it's all about. So that's the other thing I take, don't really take for granted is the ability to get up and do what I do every single day and have that drive in day out and keep living it and be able to talk to you and do this message. So that's another thing that builds a mindset of, if people aren't grateful, they're not really going to appreciate stuff and not have that drive to be better or make other people better.
Yeah, there's so much that goes into it that you can't just. It's so funny whenever we do these podcasts, like contemplating it, just like, oh yeah, we can just talk about this and that. But we always talk about like everything, and I think hopefully our audience likes that and understands that that's just part of it. it all comes full circle, and there's more to it than just turning on a cold shower and getting through 30 seconds and then 45 seconds and then a minute. There's a lot of things that go into it. And yeah, that is such an important aspect about being able to enjoy everything and being able to fully encompass yourself in everything you do. And then life is just so much more enjoyable. And I think one book that comes to mind is, for anyone who's still listening, Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind by Shunryu Suzuki. And Menchie, I think you should read this book too. I've probably read it like 4 times. I read it every year. And I didn't start this year until like a couple, probably 2 months ago. And I just read a chapter every night because that way it really sinks in. And there's just so many good lessons in it. And a lot of it all comes back full circle to what we talk about here. So I want to just drop that book, and then if you have any closing statements or closing
the biggest thing I have for people is as always, you got to get up every day and work hard. It's not easy. It will never be easy. The path you've chosen is one you kind of have to live with, and you got to get on that path and stay on that path the whole time. Get comfortable, be uncomfortable. It's one of my biggest things I've told you and told myself, and every single day is do stuff out of the ordinary, and you'll get to this bulletproof and mindset. And it's, just like everything else, you're going to take, a bullet or take a hit, and it's going to, bend and little nicks will come off. But the problem is you just make it better each and every day. So I think get out there, get after it, and just keep being who you are every day and better yourself.
Yep. There's really no other way to look at it other than what Menchie just said there. And that wraps up our episode for today. And what we're going to do is we're going to record pretty formally in the first hour, and we're just going to kind of talk off cuff in the end, in the final minute. So for anyone who is still listening, just understand that this is a completely non-filtered section, and this is more of this is like watching Game of Thrones, and then at the end of the episode, you watch the writers and the directors talk about the episode.
Yeah,
the debrief. I think it's important to include it, honestly. So yeah, debrief starting in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay. Shit. I mean, probably the only thing I didn't mention is the sauna, but you covered the same thing in the cold shower. But one thing we also didn't talk about was just the PTSD rates. But I think that's okay. Yeah. I think that'll be left for another episode. Yeah, because I think it's bigger than what we just talked about. And I like how we steered and made it just about building that strong mindset, because the PTSD side of things is a bigger thing that's going on, that our whole society is just getting softer and softer because of just conveniences and things getting easier, and not having to do things the hard way, and not having to learn how to like be lost and be comfortable being lost and reading a map, for Christ's sakes. I mean, everyone has GPS and phone. Like, I don't know. I was with people this weekend. I had an experience, and someone was just like, "Oh, I'm not getting any service. Hold on, let me find some service." I'm just like, "Wait, what? Like, what happens when you can never find service? What happens when like the satellites go down for a second, right, or whatever?" So it's just like there's just little things like that. And one thing that came to mind about the older generation that I wanted to showcase, but I'm glad we save it for these after hours story time, is so my client, his father-in-law was badass military guy, I think Navy SEAL, and he's in his like 70s or 80s, and this dude literally had missions where they're like, "We're sending you down this tube. Here's a 45. Here's a knife. Good luck." Dude's such a fucking badass, and I haven't met him yet, but the guy's telling me a story, and they shoot trap and skeet, and one of his sons said to grandfather, and he said, "Grandfather, why aren't you shooting with us?" And he goes, "Because the last time I held a shotgun, I blew off a kid's head that was just about your age." holy holy fuck. And if you, I'm sure so many people have traumatic PTSD experiences from things like that, and I'm not trying to downgrade that at all or look negatively on that at all or take away that they are actually having PTSD from them. I'm not questioning that. What I'm questioning is the mind before it experienced that. Because I know for a fact, me, if I had to blow a little kid's head off with a shotgun, I probably would never be sleeping right again for the rest of my life. But this dude probably had to, probably was working on hardening his mind and body when he was like 10 years old, right? Because back in the day, you didn't have everybody driving you to school or carpool or buses or trains. So there was little things like that that were helping his process, helping him give a process of growth and development. So my point is that this guy is older, and he went through that experience, and from what everyone tells me in his family, he's very well functioning, and um, I think there's something to do with setting yourself up before you're in those scenarios to being in those scenarios. And I'm not saying that that just does away with PTSD altogether, but when I'm looking up these things about these PTSD studies, and they have terms like, where was it? Hold on. I just want to make this one point real quick about how, what did I mention before we started actually talking? Remember there was like a term I mentioned? Oh, allostasis refers to the psychobiological regulatory process that brings your stability through change of state consequently to stress. So you have that process stimulating your response to stress, and then you have heterostasis. Heterostasis is responding to that stress and then bringing you back down to the baseline. So when we understand the science behind it and the biology behind it, you have allostasis throwing you off your game, and you have the heterostasis trying to bring you back to your game. And if you've never strengthened that push pull, then you're just going to get pushed, and you're not going to be able to right the ship and pull yourself back. So I don't know, that story just really kind of sat with me as like, wow, our generation would never be able to handle that shit.
I mean, there's some people that that do, they sign up to the military and they do handle it, but it's a very select few people, and I think you're definitely right. I think it's now we're so used to thinking that this is never going to happen to us, and when it does, I mean, there's bad stuff that happens, and how does the brain react? I mean, the brain's not really ready for seeing that kind of casualty to another human being. So I kind of would agree with you. It's what is really traumatic to some people, and what's really kind of like, you're kidding me, like that's like.
What is it? Instead of what's kidding me, it's like, well, yeah,
Well,
it
it's
is.
like,
What are you kidding me?
like,
But
oh,
it's like,
I had a bad experience on the internet. It's like, all right, like, great, you can just shut the internet off. I mean, some of the stuff.
but instead of looking at that and being upset, like be like, feel bad for that person. Be like, wow, like that person
Right.
hasn't gone through
Yeah.
any hardships yet. That's their first hardship that they need to kind of figure out and work through. Like, wow, that's sad, but they're on a little bit of a longer path to get there, and they're starting late, but good, hopefully they'll
Right.
get there. Like that's
Right.
really
As
what
long
we
as
should
they're
be
in the right
doing.
direction of how can I
Totally.
guide them to be like, yes, that's a bad thing, or it was a bad thing, but you're going to be fine.
But kind of what happens is at whatever age that is, right?
Tough
Like if it's like the kid's 9 or 10, then he might be able to eventually work through it, mature, and get stronger. But if he's already like 40, then
story.
yeah, he's kind of stuck in his ways. He's not going to learn or grow from that experience. He's going to just continue to make excuses and
And
yeah.
that's the big thing. I mean,
So
excuses, everyone can find one, and I mean, really, people don't want to hear them. Well,
yeah, but you're right about it. It really depends on their
all
direction,
about direction.
because a lot of it's like if you lose, right? If you win, great, good job, celebrate, but get ready for the next game. But if you lose, if you throw a hissy fit and a tantrum, then that's a true loss. But if you look at the game and figure out the variables that you could control, that were under your control, that you could have done better at, then it's still a win, and you're still headed
Well, that's
in the
what's
right direction.
for me one of the biggest, probably one of the biggest life lessons or life teachers was sports. And I think I know a lot of people hated sports. They almost got rid of sports in my high school when I was there, and I would always argue for sports and physical education. But sports is win or lose. So it basically teaches you life lessons like, hey, it's one or the other. It's 50-50. There's no everyone gets a trophy and hey, you participated, good job. It's like, if you're not the best or putting the hard work on the team, you're not going to be on the field on Friday night. If you're not, very talented and you work hard and you beat someone else in their spot and they get upset for you taking the spot and they're going to complain, well, that's not the right way to do it. So, but I know every sport is a little bit different, but it teaches a huge lesson to kids at a young age of you got to lose. I was always on losing teams. I I wasn't on a winning sports team until I really got to college, and still then my first year it was we were 500, so not really winning. That's losing in my book, and then you win,
Right.
but it kind of it teaches you, okay, you're not always winning, like the Vince Young story, where all you do is win, win,
Right.
win, and the first loss you're like, I don't know how to handle this, which some athletes do out there.
Yeah.
The good ones do have that adversity, and they push forward, and they're like, end goal, I'm going to win more.
The best athletes get
Yep.
pissed off. Like not just like upset at themselves, not angry at the circumstances, but fucking fired up to the point where they might even become silent. They're not even going to talk to you, but they're fucking in the zone, and anything you do is not
Well,
going to knock their
I would
focus.
say, I would kind
Uh,
of argue a little bit like yeah, when I would lose, I'd get mad at myself. It's like, man, I didn't do an
okay.
extra rep, or I could have ran a little bit harder. But that's me. That's how I took it. So it's like the next off season.
I guess I meant that they weren't just like all
Oh
out
no, right,
screaming at
right.
themselves
Like
or anything like that. I should, yeah. But you're right. But a little bit of it is like, holy shit, like I
and
can
then
do way better than
internally,
that. Or
you're like,
yeah,
okay, what do I know to get better? And then how do I have my teammate right
yeah.
here get better, get on the same page? And then you get 60 people on the same page on a team, and then you're like, all right, let's go. That's where you start this winning mindset and attitude. So it's like it can start with
And
yourself.
and and consequently, sorry, not consequently, and in addition to the whole sports thing too, what was clicked in my head is something we talked about before about growth versus fixed mindset, where you're process driven or you're results driven, and sports has always kind of innately been
Mm.
process driven, right? Like, hey, good, great job running that route. You ran that route perfectly, or you didn't really run your routes that well, and it's about the process. It's not necessarily about the outcome. It's not like, oh yeah, you caught the ball and scored a touchdown, great job. Because even a good coach would say, yeah, you caught the ball and you got a touchdown, but you didn't run your route like on time at all, and you're lucky that he even got the ball to you because the quarterback had to adjust, whatever, right? So it's process driven, like good hustle, good job, good effort. And I think that does go a long way as well, because it's like no matter what, you're still going to give it your best, your all, and you're not going to worry about the outcome until later, until after the fact. And just like that Vince Lombardi quote, it's like it's um oh, maybe I don't know if it's Vince Lombardi or not, but so there's two actually. One is definitely Vince Lombardi. He says we don't have to be perfect, but we can't we can't get perfection, but if we chase perfection, we can catch excellence. And that's the part of it, is like, just, it's not, the winning isn't everything, but the will to win is everything. The will to put your 100% all cells, full court press towards one goal or one action is everything. It's how you get growth. It's how you get freedom. It's how you create discipline. It's how you create confidence. It's how you harden your mind, body, and spirit. And I think that's more than enough reasons of why to be process driven rather than results driven.
You just got to trust the process, right? Trust that you're going to get there at the end if you put all that into it.
Totally. Yeah, I like doing these little notes. We'll do like show, verbal show notes at the end of the episode.
I still like debrief a little
great.
bit and bring it back to reality.
Yeah, exactly. Let everyone else know that we're not just like sitting here harping on one thing, and we actually have thoughts, and we're realistic about things, and we analyze everything to the core. But I think that wraps up our episode this week. Bulletproof Mindset. Catch you guys next week. Think Fitness Life.